Welcome to the Standout Agency podcast for agency owners who want to grow, not just survive.
I'm Gareth Healy. I'm an ex-agency owner and author of Stand Out or Die. I help agency founders see where they're still a bottleneck in their own business and make sure they do something about it.
And I'm Callum Healy. I find where agencies are losing hours to manual work and then build AI systems that get the time back.
Each week, one of us interviews the other on a subject related to agency growth. Everything we get into comes straight out of our own experience and client work. Occasionally, we bring in some guests to add their expert perspective on a topic. Welcome to episode 7 of the Standout Agency podcast. Callum, episode 7 already.
I know, we've done 7, which means there's one for each day of the week. So if you're not already caught up, you can watch them, binge them in chronological order.
A binge listen, yeah, or watch, or whatever, yeah, absolutely. That's a good idea. So episode 7, I've entitled, Why Your Agency Marketing is Stuck in Shawshank Prison.
Great film, one of my favourites.
Great film.
One that you showed me and never looked back ever since.
Yeah. I guess we should have a spoiler alert a little bit. We're going to refer to a scene in this film. If you've not seen it, where have you been? Because it's an absolute classic. But yeah, watch the film first or cover your ears. But yeah, great film.
Absolutely, yeah. So, Gareth, you've constructed this episode from a scene in Shawshank Redemption, which you think aligns a lot with this topic today. And what's going on there for our listeners here, especially the ones who haven't watched the film?
Yeah. So a little bit of a spoiler, yeah. No, there's a scene in this. It's about prison and people. A classic film. Morgan Freeman, great actor, is one of the characters, and his character is Red, called Red. And he eventually gets out of prison on parole after, I think it's something like 40 years or something.
Yeah, like his whole life he's just been used to one environment the whole time, and then everything's different once he gets out.
Of course, after 40 years. So, I mean, we've both watched this film in full many times, but it was on the other day, and I just flicked over on and it was on. And it was at the scene where Red is out of prison, and he's trying to integrate back into daily life, and he's got a job, and he's in a supermarket, if you remember. His job is to bag groceries in a supermarket, and it's the scene where he's doing his job, but then he wants to go to the toilet. So he asks his manager, his supervisor, puts his hand up and says, boss, can I go to the toilet?
Yeah.
And the guy says, yeah, okay, fine, but catches him on the way past and says, look, don't ask me to, you don't need to ask me, just go. And Morgan Freeman also narrates the film. Yeah,
so it's one of the best parts of it, I think, the narration. He's got a great voice.
So a great voice, of course, but he's also the narrator. So it's a bit of a comic moment, but in his narration, he explains that himself as Red, after 40 years in prison, has to, of course, in prison, they have to get permission to go to the toilet or whatever. So he says that after 40 years of doing that, he's conditioned to doing it. He can't physically go without without getting somebody to say, yes, you can.
Yeah, it's like the culture in an agency and the way, the habits that people adopt over time.
Yeah, or in any, we can all be, let's not get too far into the psychology. You'll be able to tell me why this is, but the psychology, we can very easily get conditioned into certain things, can't we?
Definitely.
Who thought, during COVID, that, if you look back, even now it seems bizarre, and beforehand, that we would be easily conditioned to stay inside. There was reasons people were dying and all that sort of stuff. But there was good reasons for it. But we very easily got it. We got into that conditioning. So there's the film. That's the reason it's built on that. But there's obviously I've connected something I think is important, particularly in terms of agency marketing for this.
Yeah. So this is all about sales and marketing, this episode in particular. And so we're talking about a film that involves a prison and different changes in cultures and whatnot. What is it that you're particularly talking about with sales and marketing here? Is it a change in culture when their agency's working with their clients and they do great marketing for them, but then for themselves, it's a little bit different? What exactly do you mean?
So we know many times, I've heard many times, because of my long career, you've heard increasingly recently that marketing agencies are poor at marketing themselves, by many of them by their own acknowledgements, and the marketing of the agency often gets neglected. And the reason people give generally as to why that's the case is that they're so busy. They're busy in their agency, and they've got clients, and the clients come first, of course, and the client work comes first. The paying clients, which of course is true and necessary. But it strikes me that whilst that's fundamentally the case, when capacity is needed, when there's a pitch for a new client or something like that, time is found. And when people say, "I haven't got time," whether it's a business or whether it's an individual, there's something lying behind that. But ultimately, we've all got the same amount of time. It's a finite resource, but we've all got the same amount of time. So it's prioritization. And I've often thought, well, maybe marketing isn't a priority for these people. They're on business, which is probably true, albeit misguided. But I think there's another reason, which is what I'm going to come on to next.
So busyness, you think, is not a correct excuse, or it's not the real reason why some of these agencies aren't spending enough time with their marketing, or they're simply not having effective marketing structure and campaigns. What do you think a hidden reason of that could be?
Yeah, so of course people are busy, but my point is, it's not necessarily being too busy. It's missing a permission structure.
Yeah.
Like Red, they require permission to start marketing.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because agencies are fundamentally, whatever flavour of agency you might operate, you're a service business, and you're conditioned like Red. In ways, and you're conditioned to provide a service. So every piece of client work, it strikes me, that agencies get arrives with the same thing, or four things. It arrives with a brief. So the client is telling you what they want, at least the objective. They might be not necessarily dictating exactly how you do it, but they're telling you what they want in a brief. They're giving you a deadline, probably. Usually quite tight deadline, but they're giving you some indication of when they want it. They're not just sending you off to do it and come back to us when you want. They're giving you a budget, usually smaller than what you want, but they're off, and they're agreeing that they're going to spend or invest a certain amount of money with you to do this. And fundamentally, they're giving you. Whether they think they are or not, but in agencies, they're giving you someone to impress. They're giving you somebody. The client is there. This is somebody to impress, to meet the deadline, to satisfy, to make sure that you do a good job for. Because agencies want to do that, of course they do, because they want to do a good job, because they do a good piece of work. Yeah. But they also want more work, so they want to impress the client and hit the deadline, bring it in on budget, meet the objective, because they want that client to brief them again.
I'd say for that reason, it would sting less if they were to miss out on their own marketing. But as long as the clients are happy, they're appealing to someone else, and there's not as much risk to their reputation. But then it could be a big risk to the business if they neglect that part of the business.
100%. Yeah, they want to impress, please the client, to win more work, but to enhance the reputation or not detract from it. Whereas doing nothing in marketing doesn't generate new leads, of course. Of course it doesn't, but it doesn't affect the reputation of the agency because nobody sees anything. Yeah. So my point is, the client that I've got the sort of construct is that agencies react. Agencies are reactive businesses. They react to a brief, to a client, to a budget, to a need, to a demand, to a deadline. And when that's not there, fundamentally, as it's not it is there actually, but in their own marketing of their agency, it's not brought to the fore. It's hidden and can be easily dismissed or pushed back or kicked into next week, next month. Then when all that stuff is when that's done, then the agency becomes ineffective. Like Red on his parole, it struggles with its environment. It's not used to, it's conditioned to working to a reactive brief. And when it's your own brief, they don't know what to do.
Maybe this aligns a lot with a topic we discussed in previous weeks of founder dependency. and that there isn't that structure that's been created. People are waiting, and they don't know who's responsible for sales, who has ownership of certain areas, of certain parts of the strategy. And it's about cultivating that environment that they can get comfortable with and spend more time on doing the sales rather than just for their clients, which is the most important, of course. Okay, so I understand that. I get the fact that agencies can be reactive and they need certain structures and permissions to understand what to do and have responsibility and accountability for those things. That can't be the whole picture, though, can it? Is there anything else you think that is hidden that people might not expect?
Yeah, I think that's the sort of, in my mind, after all this time, I've started to think that's a key blocker, that lack of permission, lack of a brief, lack of somebody there pushing a deadline. Makes it very easy to sort of kick the marketing can for an agency down the road. But you're right, Calum, of course, there are other things as well. I think, we would say at Agents of Change, one of the key, still for me, one of the key foundations of an agency marketing campaign is positioning, and positioning means taking a narrower portion of the market, a narrower focus. And agency owners find that incredibly difficult to do because they want the opportunity. They see the wider market, that focusing on or accepting work or opportunities from a wider client base is the thing to do, is attractive. And I can understand that, and I've been there myself, as you know, because only the agency owner can sign off a strategy like that.
True.
It's not done by a marketing manager or somebody junior. The agency owner or owners need to really, that's a very courageous move in any whenever it's done, to focus, to narrow, to niche, and only the agency owner can do it. But they're in their minds, of course, even if it's subconscious, the agency owner has the weight of the business on their shoulders. They have the knowing that they've got to make payroll next month and wondering whether, if narrowing means that we get less opportunities, is that less revenue? Is that more challenge? Is that going to be more of a challenge for me in running my business? That weighs very heavily, and again starts to make them push the decision down the road, if not dismiss it altogether.
It seems counterintuitive, if you were to grow your business, to eliminate potential candidates and niche down in a smaller market. But a big part of our philosophy, and if you haven't read Stand Out or Die yet, that is a great book to explain it, written by Gareth, of course. It's all about being the master of a smaller market, and that can actually make you do better work, and people seek you out more because you're known as the person who is great at marketing for a certain industry. And I think that's an interesting part of this as well, because focus is obviously, as we tell our clients, it's a very important thing, and I'm sure marketing agencies would tell their clients the same thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Agencies are one of the first things often they do if a client comes in with a strategic brief like that, particularly if they're a strategic marketing agency, is to tell the client often to focus down on a niche, or to rationalise their portfolio of products. Very easy. That's the first thing. It comes second nature for an agency to do that, but very difficult, of course, as you've suggested, to do it themselves. The agency do it themselves, but that strategic recommendation from the agency to the client comes out of a need. The client comes to them with a problem, and the agency suddenly switches on. And it's, whereas when it's your own business, you might inherently know you've got a problem, there's an issue here, but you don't have that. Again, you don't have that brief, you don't have that permission to act. Even if you are the agency owner and you can do what you want, in theory, you don't have that sort of brief or permission to do something. It's easier to default to what they've always done.
Yeah, and I suppose that brief that they're used to, and certain client demands, like you said, there's budget and someone to impress, and there's the scaffolding that's provided. It gives people structure. That will be different in structure to maybe what's required to market their own agency. Because
of course,
the structure, if someone was doing advertisements and doing marketing for estate agents, that permission structure, certain budgets and deadlines, it will all be different to how you would do it for marketing agencies. And perhaps that's part of the problem, isn't it? That they don't have the permission structure and the scaffolding and exactly for their business.
Yeah.
That's harder to make something that's different from the clients that they work with.
Totally, yeah. And some agencies, of course, are not fundamentally marketing agencies. They supply the marketing department of a client in some way. Or certainly the agencies we work with do.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily strategic marketers. And even if they are, their whole expertise might be in, as you said, FMCG brand marketing, not B2B service business marketing. So we know that there's different skills, different techniques, different tactics to employ in those different spaces, and they might not be as familiar or as good at that as what they are, even though they're brilliant at it for their market.
So we've now laid out the issue and why it exists. That marketing agencies don't put enough time and execution into marketing for themselves, and there's many reasons for that. How can we help marketing agencies, for any owners listening right now? What would be some of the steps to take to make this easier?
Yeah, of course, that's the key, isn't it? So, at risk of extending or labouring the analogy, agencies and agency owners have got to break out of their own prison.
Yeah.
They've got to treat their own marketing in a different way, not expect it to happen, not try to shoehorn it in between client work. They've got to sort of change their mindset and give themselves permission to market the business, really, in a way. And I don't think there's any, that's the principle. I don't think there's any sort of magic that needs to happen. It's very simple, really. You've got to do that, and you've got to treat your own marketing, treat yourself as your biggest client and most important client, really, in a way. You've got to treat your own marketing as the biggest job in the agency. You've got to make sure you've got a brief and an objective. Make sure you've got a strategy actually first. Make sure you've got a strategy first, which might include or may or may not include some sort of narrowing or focus or positioning work. But get the strategy right. But then execution. Don't spend out months labouring that. Execution is the key these days, as we know. So when we're executing, have an objective, have a budget, and be clear on what the amount of money you need to invest in marketing. Have a process. So set a deadline. Make sure that the deadline is fixed and it's non-negotiable. Have a process where maybe you as the agency owner brief some of your team and then get them to present back to you as you would a client. So that seems a simple and that maybe a little bit awkward thing to do, but by doing that, I think if you can do that, you get everybody in the business again aligned and culturally aligned to know this is what happens here. This is when we do our own marketing, we treat it in the same way, and we treat our MD or whoever it is as the client, and we set a deadline and we stick to it, and we make sure the before we crack on with the work, we present it back. And so we set a deadline for that, and it's ready, and then we take feedback if we need to, and amend it if we need to, and then it goes ahead. So it's following the same process you might use with a client, but just for being very disciplined about it for yourself in your own agency. I suppose
it's very much systemizing the process, isn't it?
Totally,
to do your best work for your clients, everyone in the agency, we'd hope, will have these very structured ways of approaching a problem. Like I said, there's that permission structure from the client, but then there's your own strategy, which you make sure is executed as closely as it can be, and as replicable as it can be for every client, because that's your standard. But like you say, it's all about bringing that standard into your own marketing as well. And it's interesting, one of those points that you made about having someone to impress early on. We were saying it's someone to impress is important, and also there's a greater consequence to not fulfilling clients' requests when there's a lot of commitment and there's money spent and there's deadlines. I would argue that it's just as important to impress your own team members and have, the most important opinions that are to be had about your agency. I would argue are your team members in the business, because
absolutely.
that gives people an element of confidence and pride and belief in the kind of values and missions that the agency's on. And I think it's just as important to impress yourselves with your own marketing.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, Callum. One of the to build on that, some of the things, the mistakes or issues I see in agencies in marketing themselves. Often agency owners are desperate to delegate or devolve ownership and execution of marketing to somebody else.
Yeah.
And I know agencies are different sizes, but let's just choose. When you reach a certain size of an agency and you can afford to invest in some sort of marketing manager or marketing function, that's always something I recommend. Not possible for everybody, of course, if they're at an earlier stage, but when you can do that, definitely do it. But when people do that, I see so many times that they take that as an opportunity to step back totally from the marketing and say, well, this is the marketing manager's job.
Yeah.
And the execution is the marketing manager's job, but the clients is always the MD, the founders, directors of the agency, whoever they might be. And just like a client, whilst they might devolve the execution to the agency, the client still has accountability for it. They still push for that deadline. They still approve the work. They still wonder where it is if it's not there. They still judge the output. They still take responsibility, accountability within their own business for the success or not of that marketing activity. And the agency founder can't step back. They've got to take they might be able to devolve some of the execution. They've got to own this. In fact, it's one of as time moves on and agencies grow, I think it's one of the key things that agency founders need to hold on to in terms of accountability.
It's part of the delegation pizza of the standout wheel.
We talked about that the last one of the last episodes, didn't we? You need to delegate certain things, but certainly the accountability of marketing in new business has got to sits with the owner.
The S in standout, the sales and marketing, that's one to hold on to. And it makes sense to a degree why founders or anyone in a team, an agency team, would want to delegate that to someone else, because marketing and particularly sales, that side of it, is quite uncomfortable in a lot of various formats. We've had a recent client call where we were speaking about new business with this agency, and this lady was saying that a lot of people, it's against human nature. It doesn't feel natural to do things like cold calling and cold emailing and outreach on LinkedIn and things like this, or even for some people they really don't like being in front of a camera and doing content, and that can be uncomfortable. So it makes sense really why people are trying to avoid it. But I think the message is that it's an integral part of the business.
Yeah, 100%.
Founders, particularly who we work with most closely, they're the people who set the standard, and you want everyone to be involved because it's such a big aspect of an agency. So it's interesting. I'm learning a lot listening to us speak and just exploring these ideas about sales and marketing. It's always been an interesting topic to me, and counterintuitive how marketing agencies perhaps aren't very good at marketing and sales themselves. And so, of course, ownership and founder involvement is a key part of that, and they should always hold on to that part of the business. Is this true for every size? Because you yourself was an owner of a 175-person agency. Some agencies of 10 people. Is it even more important that they stay involved? Does it become less important as time goes on?
That's a great question. I think this is always important. I think it's one of the last things agency owners should delegate, devolve, step back from, in terms of the ownership and accountability of it. Not just for clarity, not in terms of executing the marketing necessarily. Certainly when you get to a big size agency, you've got people hopefully that can do that, whether it's in the business or you use external resource. But ownership, I think one of the things that strikes me is that because of how agencies start often, when they are smaller, of course, smaller agencies don't have, less than 10 people agencies don't have the ability to probably employ a marketing person or have marketing resource necessarily. So it comes on, everything still lands on the founder.
Yeah.
But in the early days of that, agency owners often don't do it. You talked about systems earlier on. They don't have the systems in place. They win work through relationships. They win work through referrals. Work comes to them not easily, but the agency grows in the early days through that sort of referral network. So the sort of muscle for the marketing muscle, if you like, is never developed. It becomes it's natural, and then the agency owner, when they need to start marketing again, doesn't know really how to do it. Is not conditioned. Doesn't have the systems. Doesn't have the permission to do it. They put it off. They know, I've never needed this stuff really to date so far. Yeah. So what, in their minds, why do I need it now? I'll do something else before I do the marketing.
Yeah, you've mentioned to me before and taught me that some agencies that are smaller might have a few really big clients that they've helped grow, and that's their
very organic.
Very organic. Yeah. It's a massive portion of their revenue, and so they're not used to constantly having to appeal to more people on the market and obtain new clients, so that it can be, like you say, the muscle isn't trained yet. And how do they go about training that muscle then? Does this happen naturally as the business grows, like when you can delegate more time to it and there's more ownership of new employees and so on?
Yeah, so we're quite, you are certainly, I try my best, we're going to the gym, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I think, how do they go to develop the marketing muscle? You've got to commit to going through the gym door. You've got to commit to, I guess if one message or thing that people listening to this, if you're an agency owner, should take out of it is, don't try and tackle everything in marketing here, particularly if you're coming from a low base, but acknowledge there's a problem in your business or in your own setup, and commit to doing something about it. Commit to taking ownership, commit to doing something on marketing, even if it's small, but commit to doing it consistently and regularly, and start small, but then work up just as you would in a gym, I guess. Really. Yeah, that's what I'd like anybody listening to take out of this mainly.
Yeah, the gym's always a good analogy for consistency and discipline, and certainly on leg days. I'll be thinking about leg days. I already am now. I'm doing it on Wednesday, so it's Monday when we're recording this. But it's the thought of doing squats is terrible to me. But it's not going to stop me from going through the door. And a lot of the times, it's never anywhere near as bad as your mind is making it out to be.
But you've got ownership. You in your mind. You've got accountability to continue to gym and increase your fitness and etc. So we need to do that in agencies with our marketing. Yeah,
and I think a great way for beginners in the gym, like you say, we've been going a fair bit, especially these past few years. It's always about starting small, and consistency is the main thing.
Yeah.
As long as you're turning up, it doesn't matter. You don't have to go too intense because you'll burn yourself out quickly. So I imagine that's true for marketing as well. You don't want to spend 30 hours in your first week doing all sorts of content and sales strategies. Then the next week you do 15, the next week you do 5.
Start small, consistent. And of course, just like the gym, you can't send somebody else, can you?
True. Yeah.
You can't think, I'll start to improve my fitness, I'll send you to do it. That's not going to make any difference to me.
Yeah.
Just with the only marketing. So marketing managers, etc. is also very important. But if you're at a certain size, or even if you're at a larger size, but you're coming from a very low base of marketing, take ownership yourself of doing it.
Great. I enjoyed that, Gareth.
Yeah.
Great episode as always.
I've got one last question to ask you before we leave.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And the Shawshank Redemption, when Red and Andy, when they go to where they go to at the end.
Yeah.
What's the name of the village?
Oh, you really put me on the spot here. I could say that it's on a beach, but I don't know what the village is called. No, but enlighten me.
Say what a now.
Say what a now. All right.
Thanks, Callum.
It's good to know. I'll remember that one for when I'm using analogies for sales and marketing. You've been listening to Gareth Healy and Callum Healy. Together, we are Agents of Change, which is also our URL, weareagentsofchange.com.
If you want support with growing your agency, including how AI can help you future-proof your business, visit us online to learn more about what we do and find out how to connect with us.